On June 9th, 2022, NASA announced the commissioning of a study team to examine unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs, from a scientific perspective. Then, on October 21st, NASA announced the selection of 16 individuals to participate in this independent study time, one of whom is Anamaria Berea, an associate professor of computational and data science at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia. She is also a research affiliate here at the SETI Institute and a research investigator with Blue Marble Space Institute of Science in Seattle. Thank you for joining us today, Anamaria, and welcome.
Thank you, Beth. It's good to be here.
First off, Anamaria, I want to start with the very basics. What is and isn't considered a UAP? Obviously, the U is for unidentified, but where do we go with that definition?
That's a very good question. Unidentified aerial phenomena or unidentified anomalous phenomena refers to any phenomena that we see that we cannot explain yet, particularly if we see that in the atmosphere. And it can be anything, right? Because we cannot explain it, yet we don't know yet what it is. That's why it's called unidentified. I know that especially in mass media and in popular culture, they are traditionally associated with aliens, but it's not necessarily true. So this is, from the scientific point of view, these are phenomena that we cannot explain yet. And we want to take a closer look at them to understand what these are. Are they observation of aircraft, of drones? Are they atmospheric phenomena, or are they indeed aliens?
So what is the mission of NASA's new study team, and how long is the expectation for all of you to be participating? What's the timeline here?
Mm-hmm. So NASA wants to be very transparent about this, and that's why it put us together, this committee. Our expectation is to not to solve this mystery, right? Which might some people or most of the people are more inclined to think about, but it's actually for us to determine whether this is indeed a phenomenon that is worth investigating by NASA. Our timeline is for the next 6 months. So until this summer, we will have to produce a report through which we will give our policy recommendations with respect to how we can frame these phenomena in a scientific way, and how we can include NASA into this in the way that NASA is actually doing science.
Or to come up with recommendations on how to scientifically research UAPs. All right, so the committee is in the process of meeting, correct? Like, I think you guys have only had a couple meetings.
That's right. So we started at the end of October, and we have this whole period of time, which is not a lot, right? It's only 9 months, and we are meeting periodically. Yes.
How is this sort of a collaborative effort, or are people working in a siloed, independent manner and then sort of all coming together? What is the operational format for this committee?
It is collaborative, every member of the committee comes from a different perspective and a different background. We are all scientists with very different backgrounds. We are basically discussing how to create this framework for research, and how we can basically do this through the scientific process, right? The way that we are used to do it with pretty much any other phenomenon in science, regardless of the science.
So how did you get involved in the study team? Was there a call put out for members, or did they just come to you directly?
I just got the call. So, yeah.
Well, that's That's how was that call for you? What was your reaction to being asked to
Oh,
do
of
this?
course, absolutely. I mean, I am a scientist, and I am interested into researching interesting phenomena. I have been working in this whole broad field of astrobiology, whether we are talking about biosignatures or technosignatures. I've been working in this field for some time now. I come with a data science perspective, so my background is exclusively at looking at data and evidence. Of course, when there is a scientific phenomenon that is absolutely worth investigating, and we want to find out what this is, then any researcher and any scientist would be very interested and very honored to participate in something of this magnitude.
Whew, okay, that is a lot of weight for one 16-member committee, I think. All right. How much, I know that this is sort of what, aside from us, from anybody coming out and saying we found something definitive, there's a lot of burden on this committee because of the types of evidence or the types of data that you're collecting. So how much and what types of data are included in building this framework right now?
Mm-hmm. So we are not collecting data. We are only looking at what are the potential data sets that have already been collected, and that can be used again for the scientific purpose of the study of this phenomena, and also how can more meaningful data, how it can be collected in the future. With respect to this phenomena, what kind of instruments do we need, what kind of scientific protocols. So there might be a misconception again here that we have the data and that it's for us to determine what this phenomena is. Not at all. Like I said, NASA is transparent. The data that we are looking at is data that is open to the public. So we are not looking at any classified data. We are not looking at anything that the public doesn't already know. For us, it's again the task for us is to look into again what are the existing data sets, how more data, how it can be collected, and all these questions have already been posed by originally by the task force that originally came up with these questions before they even started getting the committee together.
Okay, so you just have access to publicly available data. You're not digging into any redacted files or anything like that. What kinds of data does this include? What sort of data sets are you looking at here?
We are only looking at instruments and measurements. So we are not looking at witness reports, no matter how interesting those might be. But again, because we are talking about the scientific process, we want to take into account data sets that have been collected thoroughly by different instruments. And by different instruments, I mean maybe it's satellites that are in the orbit, maybe it's aircraft. So because NASA again, it's an institution that is working with a lot of satellite imagery, that is working with missions that are collecting data. So we are looking into all of those to see which of those data sets can be useful for this phenomenon. So it's a little bit of a different approach. And again, I want to stress towards here transparency from NASA. And the other one is the scientific process, the rigorous scientific process. So that's why for now, we are looking at measurements and instruments that we know are solid in terms of data collection.
Okay, so we're talking scientific data points, we're talking satellite imagery, we're talking things that we have recorded data on. We are not going through files of photographs or eyewitness testimony, anything like that. We're just doing this from a strictly scientific data approach.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. What is there anything, I know that you guys are generally not speaking on the topic publicly too much yet, but are there any methods that you guys have thought about so far? Anything that has sort of been put on the table that you guys are discussing that you can tell us about?
Not yet. Again, the methods and the analysis will depend on the data. And we will be using any methods that are available to us at this point in the scientific community, whether those are simple, not simple, but whether those are just statistical methods, whether that's machine learning, if those data would be deemed to that we can use for machine learning. So the whole broad spectrum of methods will be determined at the point when we will have a clearer and better idea about the data. Yeah.
All right. Well, okay. So this is really interesting. I know there's still not a lot that you can tell us about just because we're still sort of early stage, but you're also doing this very quickly. You mentioned that you are primarily a data scientist. So can you sort of give a primer on what your research is bringing to the table with this particular team?
Yes, as a data scientist and as a computational scientist as well, because I'm not only a data scientist, I am a computational scientist primarily. I'm familiar with a very wide spectrum of methods. Again, starting from statistical analysis, all the way to deep learning algorithms and several combinations of methods in between. And that's what I bring to the table. And again, I do like to look at the data itself. I like to look at it in a more agnostic way, meaning that I see the data and whether it's coming, let's say, from satellite imagery, whether it's coming from different texts, whether it's coming from different audio files. And by looking at data agnostically, I can potentially identify patterns or interesting anomalies where otherwise we would not be able to look at those given our biases as scientists. Again, looking at purely at the data sets and at the evidence itself, I hope that we can either create better hypotheses that we can test. Maybe we can detect anomalies. Maybe we can detect patterns, although, again, that might not be the case. But if that's not the case, then we can at least go through a rigorous scientific process about how we can approach this question in the future, and maybe how we can design some instruments and some experiments that will take a closer look at this phenomena.
Again, this is a very short timeline to come up with this basic framework. What was the deadline that you said you guys would do, and when is that first report expected to be released?
It will be released in July, this coming year, in July 2023, yes.
Okay, so that's, how many more meetings do you have to discuss?
I mean, it depends. We have a couple of set meetings, but we also have, we are meeting on the go, so to speak. So, yeah.
Coordinating 16 people probably in 16 different areas. You're not exactly sitting in a physical meeting room throwing pieces of paper all over, right?
That's, yeah. It's not like in the movies, right, where we are closed somewhere, you know, in a room without any windows, and we brainstorm until we find the aha moment. No, it doesn't work like that. It's a very collaborative process. Again, each of the committee members, they are bringing a lot of experience and scientific knowledge to the table. Our primary goal right now is to ask lots of questions, and that's what we are doing. And that's how you do science, right? You first start by asking some very good questions, and then we will see what is the best way to get other scientists on board to help answer those questions.
That sort of brings me to the next topic I want to talk about. What sort of if you could clear up any misconceptions about the work that you are doing, what would be the main one that you would want to clear up? And are there any others that you would like to clear up? And then I have follow-ups for that. So let's start there.
Yeah. So again, the first misconception is that all UFOs and all UAPs are aliens, right? And that NASA is finally going to look into aliens. NASA has been searching for evidence of life since the very beginnings, right? Whether it's microbial life, whether it's intelligent life, but again, looking at this process in a very rigorous scientific way. Now, apart from biosignatures or technosignatures, right? What we know as SETI, or when you send a probe on Mars or Europa or Titan looking for microbial life, or when you are looking into analyzing radio waves for technosignatures and so on. This other part, which is called the UAP, or UFOs, is particularly murky as a field, and many scientists have stayed away from studying this because of all the stigma and all the heaviness that is brought into it. And this stigma and heaviness is coming basically from our social environment and our cultural biases. And mass media hasn't helped throughout the years with all these Hollywood portrayals of aliens as little green men, or or doomsday, like Independence Day, that they are going to come here and wipe us out, or something like that. So throughout the years, mass media has definitely created this murky halo around the whole field. Then, of course, there have been throughout the years, particularly with respect to UFOs and UAPs, there have been some contradictory reports that came from the defense side versus witness reports versus photographs, and there have been fakes, and it's very difficult at this point to distinguish between what's a good report, what's a bad report when it comes to witnesses, when it comes to images, and that's why we are leaving that data aside, because there is a lot of noise in the data, and we don't have a good criterion for how we can select the good ones from the bad ones. And then there is also, again, this whole misconception of, if you are a scientist that wants to study this phenomena, that you are basically a little bit crazy, right? That, you are going to take your career down the drain, which has happened, unfortunately, in the past for some of the most brave scientists that wanted to look at this through the scientific lens. And yeah, so it's a very difficult field to work with. So on top of the phenomena itself that we don't know what it is and it's difficult to study, we also have all these social and cultural biases around us that, again, make it even more difficult for scientists to work in this field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely empathize with that. Ever since I started working for the SETI Institute, I think I have a subset of friends who think that the best question to ask me is, so have you found aliens yet? Which, was funny about the first 3 or 4 times.
Right.
So, right, I understand. Okay, I'm gonna take a look at some of these. We've actually got some good questions coming in, and so I want to ask a few of these. When you talk about, this one is from Charlie. When you talk about working up a scientific framework, would you start with a definition of what the evidence is that you're collecting?
That's right. That's a very good question. Yes. So again, it's the question of how are we going to collect new data with respect to this phenomena. It's really open, and we don't know how to answer that just yet. And we will take in all the evidence, whether it's existing data sets or there will be future data sets, as long as it's instrument-based data and we have accurate measurements with respect to I don't know, geographic position, with respect to timelines, and with respect to physical properties that can be measured, and we have specific data for that. And we will not do again, it's not for us, for the committee, to actually siphon through all this data and select what's good evidence versus what's bad evidence. But as a scientist, if I were to look at these data sets, first I would just take in all the evidence, and then using using good methods in terms of classification, in terms of segmentation, it's then when we would siphon through the data and separate what we consider anomalous evidence versus something that we know what it is, or we can easily identify what it is.
Okay. I want to, okay. Original Gumshoe has asked several really good questions. I want to kind of address, and I do appreciate this question. Are you going to work against this bias that there is within the SETI research and without the SETI research community?
Yeah, I hope so, and I've done so, and I've tried to do so all the times. Yes. Yeah.
And they're also asking, and I kind of am curious myself. I mean, obviously you're searching, you know, you're working on SETI, you're doing this kind of research. Do you personally believe that there is alien life out there that we can find?
I have no personal beliefs whatsoever because, again, I'm a scientist first and foremost, and I do like to see the evidence. I do like to look at probabilities, and I absolutely love the debate about whether we will first find microbial life versus intelligent life. And in the absence of good probabilistic assessments, it's very difficult to create a personal belief. So my personal beliefs are my scientific beliefs, okay? And my scientific beliefs are basically not beliefs, but they are evidence and probabilities. So
I also, this sort of brings up another question. You guys are but one team that's working on this. We have our own projects here, multiple of them. Are there any other projects that you are involved in that are dealing with SETI research? Are you planning to be involved with anything, sort of like say the Galileo project at Harvard, or any of these other programs that are coming up? Are you looking to be involved in these as well once your time with this committee wraps up?
So at this point, I'm not involved in any other type of research regarding to UAPs. I will probably like to be involved into the actual research for UAPs after we are done. Our job as the committee will be done. And because the more I look into, actually, when I came into this committee, I had no I had not looked at UAPs before at all. I was looking only at biosignatures. I was looking at only technosignatures. And it's only now that I am a part of this committee that I started to look at this phenomenon a little bit more closely and to look at the data. Again, as a scientist, from the scientific point of view, I find it very fascinating. There is this phenomenon that we don't know what it is. So how do we collect the data? How do we apply rigorous scientific process to something that we really don't know? That really intrigues me. Absolutely, after we are done with the work on this committee, if possible, I will probably like, if time permitting, to actually do some real scientific research on this as well. Although, again, I am also doing research with biosignatures and technosignatures, so we'll see. Maybe we'll get into the full spectrum, and that would be very nice.
Well, I am excited for this. I am hopeful that we can finally get this as a scientific field and not just a look at the pretty pictures and hope. Extraordinary claims do require extraordinary evidence, and this is one of those things that I would like to see us be 100% certain on. So I am glad that NASA is taking these steps. I may have thoughts and feels about the 90s and NASA, but anyway, what are you excited about with this project, and do you have any last thoughts that you want to share with our viewers?
Oh, I'm excited about everything because all the questions that we are asking are really hard questions. Again, NASA has petabytes of data, right? Mm-hmm. So looking for the needle in the haystack when it comes to can we use existing data sets to find anomalies? Or maybe it's not the right place to look for these kind of anomalies in the existing data sets at NASA. But that's a really hard question, and it's a good question. Then the second good question is, how can we collect the data for a phenomenon that we don't know when and where it's going to occur? That's another really good question, and also it involves what kind of instruments? How can you measure? What kind of physics? What kind of properties are we going to measure? These are very, very difficult questions again, and of course, any question that is related to the idea of are we alone, right? Which is basically the logo of the SETI Institute, if I may say so. All of those questions are very, very, very big and interesting and worth pursuing. Again, whether we are looking for tiny microbes or even past evidence of life or within our solar system, or if we are looking for evidence of life in exoplanetary atmospheres, or if we are looking for evidence of life in radio and optical waves, or if we are looking for evidence of alien life right here on Earth, I think all of these questions are just so exciting. So
I look forward to the first report from this committee and hope to see how this will turn out, and hopefully we will have a decent framework for doing some data analysis on UAPs. A nice little catalog of some scientifically measured phenomena would be fantastic. So thank you, Anamaria, for joining us today and for talking about this. I really hope that we will have you and other members of the committee back after the report is released so we can talk about what you guys came up with. And so I'm very excited for it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's SETI Live.